Hmm? Ah! Oh.
I don't think about you much at all. Nobody here really does. Bugs you, doesn't it? You have all this pain, all these feelings, and nobody's really paying attention.
You think I just want attention?
No, I think you're up in the clock tower with a high-powered rifle because you want to blend in. Believe it or not, Jonathan, I understand about the pain.
Oh, right. Because the burden of being beautiful and athletic, that's a crippler.
You know what? I was wrong. You are an idiot. My life happens to, on occasion, suck beyond the telling of it. Sometimes more than I can handle. And it's not just mine. Every single person down there is ignoring your pain because they're too busy with their own. Beautiful ones, popular ones, the guys that pick on you. Everyone. If you could hear what they were feeling. Loneliness, the confusion. It looks quiet down there. It's not. It's deafening.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Still Slaying, a Buffyverse podcast. I'm Penny.
And I'm Kara. This episode, we're going to be discussing Season 3, Episode 18, Earshot, directed by Regis Kimball and written by Jane Espenson. And as you'll recall, the original air date for the last episode we covered, which was Enemies, was March 16th of 1999.
Yes, but due to this episode's subject matter and content, the network made the decision to postpone its release. We want to go ahead and mention a trigger warning now for discussions of gun violence and school shootings. We should also mention discussion of suicide.
Yes, that's, yeah. Left that one out. That's kind of important in this episode. This episode did not actually air until September 21st, 1999, which was about 2 months after the season 3 finale wrapped up, and really just I think it was a couple of weeks before the season 4 premiere. And the reason for that is it was originally scheduled to air following a brief break 1 week after the Columbine high school mass shooting that had occurred on April 20th of 1999.
As we mentioned, we will be discussing this subject matter during the episode. We will put time code in the show notes if you want to skip the discussion of the specifics of the Columbine shooting, but chances are it's going to be sprinkled throughout the episode a little bit. So I don't know, maybe if it's going to be really triggering for you, just don't listen to this one. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some alternative titles in other languages for the episode were Inner Voices in French, Foreign Thoughts in German, The Reach of the Voice in Portuguese, and Secrets of Healthy Skin in Polish. I don't know
I
what that
would
means.
really like Piotr to give us some input on this, because when I was looking it up, I was just like, did I read that right? And then I checked it on 2 different websites, and I was like, well,
Okay. That's
interesting.
really funny. I mean, I guess
Polish is fun.
they call them the scabby demons, so
Yeah.
all right.
I don't know.
Okay.
That might be my favorite alternate language or alternate title
Yeah.
in a different
Secrets of
language that
Healthy
we've
Skin.
gotten.
I love it.
Just special.
So let's go back to April of 1999 when this was originally going to air, and let's get into it. seems like the sound effect is not appropriate for this particular flashback, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, April 20th, 1999. That was when the Columbine shooting happened at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado. It occurred when 2 teens went on a shooting spree, killing 13 people and wounding more than 20 others before turning their guns on themselves and committing suicide.
And I'm sure, as many of you know, the Columbine shooting was, at the time, the worst high school shooting in U.S. history. And it prompted a national debate on gun control and school safety, as well as a major investigation to determine what actually motivated the gunmen, Eric Harris, who was 18, and Dylan Klebold, who was 17. And other school shootings, including the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, and the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida, and most recently the Robb Elementary School shooting in Uvalde, Texas, continue to raise these questions about school safety and gun control in the United States. And it's just, I don't know. There's so much that we could say about this episode and about these school shootings in general, but Columbine in particular, for me, I was about, second semester of 5th grade, ready to go to middle school, also thinking ahead to high school. And this is one of those flashbulb memories for me, coming home and seeing my mom watching the news and seeing kids running out of the school with their hands up over their heads. I will never forget it. And it stuck with me. I remember going into middle school and high school terrified most of the time, thinking, okay, well, if a shooter is here, there's an exit over there. Like, it just completely changed the way I viewed my middle school and high school experience. So this one kind of hit a bit hard.
This is one of the things that I feel lucky about, is that I was already out of high school when this happened. I was, in fact, out of college. I was in law school, and it didn't feel like something that could happen at the law school, although I guess there's no reason why it couldn't. There have certainly been college shootings. Yeah. But at the time, it didn't feel like it was something that could happen to me. It was devastating and horrifying, and I truly thought that it would turn the country around on gun control. The same way, years later, the Sandy Hook shooting, I fully assumed that little kids being killed was going to be enough to convince people that we needed to do something about specifically semi-automatic weapons. And the fact that it didn't really move the needle at all in most states is such a hard thing for me to accept, because it makes me question the belief I've always had that most people are good people. And it's if we can't get most people to agree on we shouldn't have automatic weapons or semi-automatic weapons in the hands of civilians, I don't know what we can ever agree on.
Yeah. And at least, my perspective, especially living in Texas, is why not at least try? We know there's no guarantee that if bad guy wants to get gun or do damage, they're going to be able to do so. But why not make it more difficult? That's one thing that I will never understand.
The argument of like, oh, well, this thing that you're proposing isn't perfect and won't 100% work never works on me, because I'm always like, will it 50% work? Like, that's better than 0. And I live in Massachusetts, where we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country and one of the lowest rates of gun deaths. So I believe it works. And if other states would follow suit, and if heaven forbid we did like a buyback program for people's weapons, like they did in Australia, they like bought everyone's automatic weapons off of them. then
Yeah.
maybe we could have, kids living longer, kids not having to go through active shooter drills, which I think is its own trauma.
Yeah.
I am very entertained by the campus protests that are going on right now, and the police being like upset to discover that these kids who grew up with school shootings and active shooter drills know how to barricade themselves into a room for safety. It's like, yeah, our society taught them these skills and they're using them.
Yep. And I feel kind of fortunate because when I was, in school, there were presentations and discussion about active shooters, but it wasn't to the point where it was a part of everyday life where we had active drills. We had tornado drills being in Texas, but that was about it. And watching my friends who have children now having their 5-year-olds come home talking about active shooter drills, that just something doesn't sit right. And I'll say, with Robb Elementary here in Uvalde, I know, not to say too much, I know one of the law enforcement individuals who investigated it after the fact, and the stuff that this person saw inside that school and relayed to me is something that it makes my stomach hurt thinking about it. And I do not understand how people can see the violence and not want to do anything about it. So inevitably in this episode, it's going to come up, talk more. I know, I've got family members that had relatives present the day of the UT Tower shooting, and that is something that always crosses my mind in this episode. So it's going to come up, but I also think it's important to talk about it because it is still such, a pressing issue. I feel like it's worse off than it was back when this was supposed to air in April of 99.
Oh yeah.
I remember, thinking then, I was like, this has to change. Like, kids can't be getting shot in school to this degree. And there had been other school shootings before this, but not to this scale. And, social media also about to explode in the 2000s didn't help the issue. So just fair warning, we will definitely be continuing to talk on this subject. I did think it was important to end our segment on Columbine on the victims of that shooting, those who lost their lives, and focus on that, because I think that is something that really should stick with us as opposed to the names of the two shooters who everyone knows. I think it's important to have the victims' names out there as well.
I couldn't agree more. I'll start. Cassie Bernal, who was 17.
And Stephen Kernow, who was 14.
Corey DePuter, 17.
Kelly Fleming, who was 16.
Matthew Kechter, 16 years old.
Daniel Mauser, 15.
Daniel Rorbo, also 15.
And William Dave Sanders was 47.
So probably a teacher.
Yeah.
Rachel Scott, who was 17.
Isaiah Scholes, who's 18.
John Tomlin, 16.
Lauren Townsend, who was 18.
And Kyle Velasquez, also 16. I think about these kids and how, they were probably getting ready for prom. Some of them applying to colleges. Some of them getting their learner's permit to learn how to drive. Some of them taking their driver's exam soon. Like the ages that they are, they're just beginning to have a life. And
they're just starting.
To have it taken in such a violent way is heartbreaking.
When I think, the higher ups at Buffy and the WV absolutely made the right call to postpone this episode, especially with, kind of the cheeky plot twist at the end and how it's a bit lighthearted. at the end, I think that probably wouldn't have been received very well at the time. Similar to, after 9/11, there were multiple TV shows that kind of took their upcoming episodes off the air. Friends didn't air for a bit because you could see the Twin Towers, in the background shots of a lot of the show. So I think it was a good tactful decision of them to, give us some time and air this later.
Yeah. It's amazing how well it holds up over time because of how relevant school shootings still and even more so are.
And the teenage experience in general, that there's so much in this episode that I feel like will forever be relevant for anybody growing up and anybody in high school and kind of wrestling with, fitting in for one.
Yeah.
And, Buffy has a little bit more to deal with than your average high schooler.
Well,
just a smidge.
With that, let's get into the episode, which delightfully starts with a run and stumble from Buffy that is a trap. I love it because when you're watching it and the first time and you see her stumble and fall, you're like, oh no, they're gonna get her, and then she smiles and you're like, oh no, she's gonna get them. And it's such a fantastic micro example of the whole show. It's like Buffy is so good at turning the expectation of her being this tiny girl back on monsters, and it's delightful. I personally have always loved it when somebody in my legal work would underestimate me because I was a woman, or because up until pretty recently I still kind of looked like I was 20, and they would think I was like an intern or something, and they would talk down to me and condescend to me, and I'd be like, just go ahead, underestimate me some more. It's gonna be awesome.
This is fine.
This is perfect. You're just falling for my trap.
That's a fun feeling.
One day I was leaning into it so hard, and my colleague was in my office with me, and we were on a conference call, and I was letting the other side condescend to me and the whole bit, and he leaned over and muted my phone, and he was like, what are you doing? Because to him I was acting really weird, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you'll see. And he was like, all right. And he just put the phone back, not on mute. And then by the end of the call, he was like, that was so fun. Because the other side, I would just be like, I don't understand. Can you explain it again? Until they started shooting themselves in the foot by trying to explain to me why they were right. And I'd be like, oh, so it's not like you said before. It's like this other thing. And
that's funny.
And they fall for it every time. It's a run and stumble, but as a lawyer. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I remember there was one hearing in particular with some out-of-town attorneys, and they showed up. I wasn't sitting at counsel table yet, the first counsel table, first chair. I was in the back of the courtroom, and I introduced myself. We had been emailing, and clearly they didn't, capture my name to memory. And he asked me to get copies and bring him a bottle of water because he assumed I was court coordinator or secretary or whatever. And this judge in particular happened to be my favorite judge. And once the case was called and I got to go up and make my announcement, the look on his face was pretty priceless.
Yeah.
And I was just like, don't be a dick and assume, man.
Yeah. It's the 21st century. Women have all kinds of jobs now.
Shocking.
Yeah. Shocking.
Including lunch ladies.
Yeah. Oh, God.
I can't. I almost forgot how it ended. It's been so long since I saw it. And then, when Buffy was up in the tower with Jonathan, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's not the killer.
Not what happens. Yeah. But it's so well crafted.
If you are gonna kill yourself with a gun, a sniper rifle is a bad choice.
Yeah, I don't know how.
I don't know what he
I
thought
mean,
he was gonna do.
maybe it was the only one he had access to, although I have seen, might be a little graphic, but as you know, before I have seen people who have pulled the trigger of a shotgun, for example, with their toe.
Yeah,
To
it's
kill
possible,
themselves. Like,
but
it's possible.
it's a
but
bad fit.
yeah, I guess that may have been the only thing he had access to. I don't know, but I'm very glad Jonathan is still around.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you know, and it's nice that Buffy, once she kind of realized what was going on, was still concerned about him.
Yeah.
It sticks.
And she says it's nice to help somebody in a non-slang capacity, and
Yeah.
it must be true. And then, of course, the fantastic line where Giles is like, oh, maybe you should go to prom with him. And she's like, who am I, Saint Buffy? I love it so much. Like, there are
that's very
limits
fitting
to my generosity, and that is one of them.
Yep.
I'm not going to prom
Come on,
with Jonathan.
Giles.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
so
and no
funny,
doubt it would have been great for Jonathan's self-esteem to go to the prom with Buffy, but come on.
True.
There are, yeah.
Although when that in the beginning scene when she gets that like demon ooze on her,
Yeah.
and it just kind of seeps in, whatever, something about that visual just really creeps me out.
It's really
Every
gross.
time I see it, I'm just like, oh no.
Yeah, nasty.
And I you know, I started thinking about what I lean towards hypochondriatic tendencies. And I know for a fact if this had happened to me, I'd probably just be locked in my bedroom waiting for something terrible to happen. I don't know if I would tell anyone, except for maybe Giles, but all of the possible things that could happen to you that were, you know, like a part of the demon. There are a lot of really horrible things. I like Willow being like, was it a boy demon?
What are you doing, Buffy? Nothing. Checking for horns. Oh, you know, Buffy, I don't even think Giles is right about you becoming like a demon. I mean, he's totally burnt. You know, dealing with faith in this ascension thing. Between you and me, he's not doing his best work. What if he is right? I'm suddenly gonna grow this demon part, and we don't even know what it is. It could be claws or scales. What? Is it a boy demon?
So good. Like, no, that would be terrifying.
Yeah, the Buffy, like, sort of subtly checking her head for horns is so cute, because it's like,
so funny.
That's what we would all be doing, right? We'd be like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
is it? Am I going to get the horrible skin? Am I going to get the
Yep.
horns? Am I going to get a
Yep.
tail? Like, ah!
Like the scabby skin would not be fun.
No.
It's just like, poor Buffy. But, you know, what ends up happening to her, being able to hear people's thoughts. I remember watching this for the first time being like, that is a terrible thing to have happen to you.
Yeah.
You know, whenever, you know, I think everybody's been sitting around either as kids or at a dinner party or wherever, where it's like, if you could have one superpower, what would it be? And it always boggled my mind when people would pick the ability to read other people's thoughts. And I was like, can I do it at will?
Yeah, I don't want to know
Because
what most
then-
people are thinking.
No. Like, I
The
know what
stuff they
I'm
say
thinking.
out loud is bad enough.
Right? I'm just like, I don't need to know what other people are thinking about me. That's none of my business.
I always
It's
pick
just not
telekinesis.
necessary.
Always. I have
Yeah.
always chosen telekinesis. It's the best one.
Telekinesis would be so handy.
It's like the
for
Force.
so many different reasons. I get torn between that and invisibility.
Oh, I don't want to be invisible.
Because I would only want to be able to turn it on and off at will. Like, that would have to be part of the power, because then you can be because the number of times I want to be a fly on the wall somewhere, I feel like that kind of takes over. But telekinesis is more practical
It's the
and
best
more
one.
helpful.
Because
Or
you could fly too with it. So
you can move yourself. Yep.
yeah.
Like levitate. That would be nice. But
I
the
would do
reading
that all
of
the
the
time.
minds, especially in a high school,
Yeah.
No, thank you. Like, of course, we all knew what Xander was going to be thinking about.
Yeah.
That was a given. And when he's sitting there and his brain starts going, he's like, naked women, naked Buffy. Oh no. And Buffy is just like, is that all you think about? And he goes, actually.
And then he just runs.
Bye. I was like, that is very spot on for poor Xander. But it's just terrible.
Oh, it's horrible. And I mean, the early parts of it, of her with the gift, you know, there's a bunch of cute moments, right? Like there's the hilarity of her just like enjoying Wesley being so uncomfortable, where he's like, look at Cordelia. No, don't look at Cordelia. Like it's oh my God, it is so funny. And
the look she gives him, just like staring and smirking at him.
Yeah. I use that photo
perfect.
A lot of her because she's like rests her chin on her hands and she's just enjoying it. And it's such a great photo of Buffy. That image that I use it all the time when I want to like focus on her.
I am my thoughts. If they exist in her, Buffy contains everything that is me, and she becomes me.
More stoner
I cease to
Oz.
exist.
What am I gonna do? I think about sex all the time. Sex. Help. 4 times 5 is 30. 5 times 6 is 32. Naked girls. Naked women. Naked Buffy. Oh, stop me.
God, Xander, is that all you think about?
Actually? Bye.
Xander has just illustrated something. Chances are you're all going to be thinking whatever you least want Buffy to hear. It's a question, of course, of mental discipline.
He's right.
Look at Cordelia. No, don't look at Cordelia. She's a student. Oh, I am bad. I'm a bad, bad man.
Excuse me.
Yes, you are, Wesley. You're a bad, bad man.
Handle it.
It's
well,
so
and I also
hilarious.
love that Xander, even in his own brain, can't math. He's
I know.
4 by 5. 4 times 5 is 30. 5 times 6 is 32. And I was like, no, sweetie.
It's
nope,
really not.
Neither of those are right. And Oz, of course, is being super philosophical.
Yeah.
And my favorite has to be Cordelia, though.
Oh,
I love that she says exactly what she is thinking.
Yeah, every time.
It's perfect.
I don't see what this has to do with me. I don't see what this has to do with me.
They nailed it.
Yeah.
So
it couldn't have been
perfectly.
funnier. Like, there's nothing Cordelia could have been thinking that would have been funnier than the fact that she says exactly what she's thinking. I love it so much. And of course, Willow's thoughts are sort of insecure. Like, oh, now Buffy won't need me. Oh, no, now Buffy's going to know Oz better than I do. And their personalities are also revealed. And like Giles is all about concern for Buffy and protecting Buffy, you know, and
which is so sweet.
It's such purity from him.
Speaking of Giles, but not purity, when Buffy is in bed and Joyce, what did she say? Chicken or stars, like the chicken noodle soup. And you can tell on her face that she is trying so hard not to think about it. And I love when she finally walks away, like you had sex with Giles?
Wait,
so on the hood of
I've got laundry.
Why are you...
You had sex with Giles? You had sex with Giles?
It was the candy. We were teenagers.
On the hood of a police car?
I'll be downstairs. You feel better.
Twice?
I love that.
It was the candy. We were teenagers.
It's so good.
Oh my God.
I think, that moment, I love that they brought that up because of course that is what Joyce would be thinking about in front of Buffy, not wanting her to know what happened. And poor Buffy. I'm glad she can't also, basically jump into their imaginations
Oh,
or
God.
anything like that, because that would be way too much.
That would be horrible.
And then, of course, using it in class. Brilliant.
I love
She's
that
frustrating
scene.
the hell out of that one girl.
Nancy.
But it's so good.
That girl, Nancy, is the same character that we saw in The Wish, who was one of the white hats. Remember how there was a white hat girl? She has a very different look in The Wish. She has straight hair and she's wearing sort of like more butch clothes, but it's the same actor. And then I love when Buffy does the like run at the end up the stairs and everything. She's in the flips and all that to get to Jonathan, and Nancy's like, I hate her. Because there are some people that like
checks out.
Like Buffy never did anything to Nancy, but like I get it. You're just jealous. And some people, you know, seem to have everything, and like Jonathan assumes Buffy has this perfect life, right? Like, well, you're beautiful and athletic. Those are the things I wish I was. So you must have it all figured out.
I think people typically seem to project that onto attractive people. You know what I mean? Like, and that's part of, but you know, pretty privilege is a whole other topic. But we assume a lot of things subconsciously about pretty people. And it checks out that Jonathan would be like, obviously this beautiful blonde girl is happy and way better off than I am.
And it's like the prime example of someone whose life, as she says, sucks beyond the telling of it.
Yeah.
And
she's like, Buffy's had a hard couple of years.
And that she still has so much compassion that she can feel for Jonathan and also share her compassion with him, in that she's like, all of these people have their own pain. Like, you're not alone. You're not the only one, which is an incredibly hard lesson to internalize, I think, for people, especially who live in this American individualistic culture we have. We're sort of taught that our own thoughts are special and unique to us. And we forget sometimes that we're part of a society and we're interconnected with everyone else. And that the similarities between us and other people are bigger than the differences. And the idea that you don't know what someone else is going through, I think I never fully grasped that until I started being someone who was going through something that I kept a secret, and I had other people tell me how together I was. They'd be like, well, you've got it all figured out. And I'd be like, what? Is that what
you're getting from this?
Is that what it looks like? And and they'd be like, yeah. Or I've had a lot of people in my life assume I was wealthy, like from money kind of wealthy.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And I don't know what it is about me that makes people think that, other than, I don't know, white. And for the past 20 years, I've had, you know, good paying jobs. But like, this was before that, where people would be like, oh, well, you would never know what it was like to not be able to make rent. And I'd be like, I know what it's like to have roommates in a 1-bedroom apartment in order to make rent. Like, I know what it's like to eat nothing but bagels for 3 months because I didn't have enough money for real food. Like
saltines and tuna.
A lot of hummus. There was a lot of hummus in my 20s. Like,
when people, you know, assuming really never gets you anywhere. Yeah. And that's one thing. My dad, I love it. He had all these like little sayings that he would repeat to us growing up, not original or anything, but the assumption one always stuck with me. It's like, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Like, he
I like the Veronica Mars version of that, where her best friend Wallace says,
I love Wallace.
When you assume, you really just make an ass out of you.
Yeah.
I love that.
Seems accurate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good show. Another powerful blonde character, but
who looks on the surface like she's got it all figured out, and who internally is a giant disaster.
Right?
Oh, Veronica
But
Mars.
I think it takes some life experience to really have that sink in, and the fact that Buffy is able to put herself in other people's shoes, probably because of what she has gone through, not only supernaturally in terms of being the vampire slayer and having, you know, a boyfriend who turned evil, her parents' divorce, and her life in general, having her mom and feeling all this pressure as a teenager. She's able to empathize with people who are nothing like her necessarily on the surface, and that is a huge developmental skill to have as a teenager.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, we see the contrast between her and Faith like no other.
Yeah, Faith does not have empathy.
No, she wears what happened to her as, you know, she's got this chip on her shoulder, and she approaches it and deals with it in a way that's entirely different from Buffy. And, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why this show is still so relevant today, because all of these things are things that not only teenagers go through, but adults. It never hurts to have a reminder that people are dealing with things that you have no idea about, and you never truly know what's going on in somebody's life. And I feel like empathy is something that we still are lacking a considerable amount of, especially here in the US.
I think the more we get isolated and interact with people primarily through social media and filtered photos and, you know, TikTok challenge videos and things like that, the more and more we lose sight of the unknown about each other, or the ability to find out these things about each other. Like, if you're not spending time with somebody and seeing their whole life and not an edited version of their life, you're never going to know anything about what's going on with them. And I do want to say that knowing that other people are in pain, you can have compassion and empathy for them. It doesn't excuse them treating you badly. Like, look out for yourself. Don't let somebody else's pain turn into your own pain, but do try to have compassion for what they're going through that led them to do whatever it is when you make your decision about how to protect yourself, right? Like, you don't want to just like lash out at somebody if they're going through something horrible. You need to remove yourself from the situation, but remember that it probably isn't about you. It's about something that happened to them.
That's the thing. That's one of the things that once I actually learned it and internalized it was so helpful.
Yeah.
Like, don't take everything personally, and truly what other people think about you is none of your business. You know, it's just one of those things that the sooner you can learn it, the better, I think, for your mental health. But
it's not easy, and it's not taught,
no.
And it's not necessarily intuitive. And unfortunately, you know, Buffy comes by this emotional intelligence through trauma. And that's how a lot of people get there, is they experience trauma of their own, and then it opens their eyes up to the fact that there's trauma all around them. It's a sad truth that we all deal with in this world we live in.
I couldn't not talk about the Othello of it all.
Yeah, let's get into it.
In this episode. Do
you want me to play the clip?
Yes, please.
Jealousy clearly is the tool that Iago uses to undo Othello. But what's his motivation? What reason does Iago give for destroying his superior officer?
Cassio has my place. Twixt my sheets, he's done my office.
Well, he was passed over for promotion. Cassio was picked instead. And people were saying that Othello slept with his wife.
Buffy did the reading? Buffy understood the reading?
When did she study? Was I supposed to study? Miss Murray's kind of hot.
Oh, God.
I was gonna say Cassio. I hate her.
Any other reason?
Race.
Good, Nancy. Can't overlook that.
Look at them scrambling for the teacher's praise like pigeons for old bread crusts.
Who's that guy? It's Freddie Iverson. He writes those editorials for the school paper. He's so dark.
Bread crusts? That's deep. I should write that down.
Is there something else at work here?
Well, he sort of admits himself that his motives are spurious. He does things because he enjoys them. It's like he's not really a person. He's the dark half of Othello himself.
Whoa. I love that. Ooh.
Buffy. Really? Very astute. I said something quite like that in my dissertation.
I know. I mean, I agree with that.
I know.
Yes, and doesn't that also explain Othello's readiness to believe Iago? Within seconds, he turns on Desdemona. He believes that she's been unfaithful. And we're all like that. We all have our little internal Iagos that tell us our husbands or our girlfriends or whatever don't really love us. We can never really see what's in someone's heart.
I love Freddie Iverson being like, that's deep. I gotta write that down.
Bread crusts.
That's like such high school version of deep.
Spot on. Yep. He's like coloring his nails black with a Sharpie or something.
Yeah.
Like I love that whole scene. But I also, that one particular part, Buffy knowing to say the word like spurious on her own would never happen.
No.
Like that's just not a Buffy vocabulary word. But when she points out that Iago is essentially the dark half of Othello himself, I cannot help but think about Faith and Buffy.
Yeah.
Because we have talked about, the foils and the mirrors and the dark versions of, different characters, with Faith and Buffy being kind of the center in this season.
And the jealousy factor, because Faith has done exactly what Iago does, which is convince Buffy that Angel is or might be or could be unfaithful to her, and has, complicated Buffy's life and her relationship with Angel and her relationship with Faith with this jealousy that isn't actually based on anything, right? Because Angel
jealousy
just isn't interested in Faith.
It's just such a dangerous, emotion. And clearly throughout history, there are multiple examples about how jealousy can lead to, not even being dramatic, death. Jealousy is such a common motive for murder or any other crime. And on a small scale in high school, I mean, come on, it's rampant and it creates all sorts of issues. And it's not a coincidence, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we go straight from this scene to the scene between Angel and Buffy, where she's trying to read his mind and realizes that she can't.
Yeah, I think that's the next scene.
It planted the seed in her brain. She's like, oh, I should, take advantage of this and see what Angel's really thinking. And I do like that she can't get into his head. It's a little convenient, but then
he's like, it's like the mirror. My thoughts create no reflection in you. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense, but it's nice poetry.
It doesn't.
So
it sounds nice. And I was like, what? Okay. I mean, I could get it if he was saying, like, if his thoughts are reflections, like if he is reflecting on something, like making it a bit of a play on there. But I was like, okay, so obviously we just didn't want her to be able to read Angel's mind.
Yeah.
Get it. Like, I got it.
And this is another opportunity for Willow to be a really good friend when she's like, as always, I advise you to ask. Like,
yep.
Buffy is like, I don't want to do the direct route thing. And Willow course corrects her, and it's really good advice. Like it really is, because I've been trying to do this more and more in my life. When I think somebody is mad at me or making a decision because of one reason or another reason, this has been happening in my family. I reach out to the person and I say, it feels like X to me, but what is going on with you? And every time they're like, that's not what's happening at all. Like, I've made a whole scenario in my head where someone's mad at me or like whatever it is. And they're like, no, that didn't factor into it at all. And I mean, yeah, maybe they're just lying to be nice to me, but I don't think so. I think that left to yourself, your brain will spin worst case scenarios and convince you they're real. And
I spent like 2 hours last night doing this to myself.
Oh yeah, there you go.
On my like about a friendship, just spiraling and trying to find what I could and make sense of it. And I was like, this is not helpful at all. Like, I need to just straight up ask this person if there's an issue or, you know, address it head on. And I did. And now it's fine because nothing that I was thinking was true.
Yeah.
And we all have been there. We have all done that. But it's just, you know, that's a dangerous game to play.
It's human nature. Don't be too hard on yourself when you do it because we're all going to do it. But just try to remember. Sometimes I try to remember what would Buffy do, but in this case, what would Willow do? And just ask the person. Or
that was some pretty solid advice.
Yeah, or like just don't make assumptions in worst case scenarios because that's your brain like trying to survive a tiger attack and you're in 21st century America, probably not going to get attacked by a tiger unless you're the husband of that lady on Tiger King.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Carol Baskin.
Yeah. I never ended up watching that because just seeing tigers in cages upset me too much.
I rage watched it with my ex-husband at the time. And I don't think he enjoyed it because I would not shut up. This is some bull.
Yeah. The animal abuse thing is really, it's hard for me to watch. I don't like it.
I was just like, I hope one of those tigers eats him. And he was just like, calm down. You know that would get the tiger killed. And I was like, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah, that is true.
I don't want the tiger to die.
Tigers are my favorite animal. And so I was especially upset to see the tigers in cages. Where I wouldn't be as upset about other animals.
Yeah, that would not be a good one for you to watch. That's how I feel about elephants.
Yeah,
I can't handle it.
Yeah, they're such sweet animals.
They see us basically as puppies. They're like, oh, look at that little thing.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, gosh. We could, anyway, I promise not to go off on a tangent about elephants because I really could and I really want to, but I won't. I will say.
Yeah. Let's go back to Othello. I have never read or seen Othello, which is like a real gap in my education. But
have you seen Aladdin?
I have. Similar?
So the bird's name is Iago, Jafar. And it has a lot of parallels and tracks the plot in a lot of ways for Othello. So you should definitely watch both back to back.
Interesting.
Because it's really fun. Well, it's fun for me, but I think you would get a lot out of it. And any of our listeners, if you are also English major nerds or literature nerds, if you haven't done it already, watching Aladdin and Othello back to back is pretty interesting. Same thing with Hamlet and The Lion King.
I hate The Lion King.
Kind of. Yeah.
It's racist.
About that. Yeah.
Somebody I know was just at the Hollywood Bowl. There was a concert of the music from The Lion King, and she was like posting pictures of it, and I was like, looks like fun. I still hate The Lion King.
That's fair. Definitely fair.
But I wanted to know how Othello ends, and I'm sorry, spoilers for a several 100-year-old play, but what happens at the end of Othello?
Oh, gosh, it's just kind of terrible. Othello ends up killing himself. So, yep. Iago kills Amelia, who is Othello's... Wait a second.
Desdemona is Othello's wife, right?
Yes.
Is Amelia Cassio's wife?
I think that's right. Yes. Jesus. I don't think I've read this in 10 years. But essentially, Iago kills Amelia and he gets taken prisoner. And Othello kills his wife. That's kind of the big reveal, and the biggest plot point of this is he's driven by this jealousy and insecurity and the prodding and plotting of Iago's scheme that he ends up killing his wife. And he's beside himself, and ultimately he ends up
killing himself.
And it is absolutely terrible. Cassio ends up getting to choose what happens to Iago after he's imprisoned, and it's essentially implied that he's going to be tortured until he can't be tortured anymore. Like, all in all, it is one of the more brutal endings, I feel, even for Shakespeare, like minus maybe Titus Andronicus or something. But it's a pretty barbaric ending. And
yeah,
using the word barbaric also draws up a lot. There's a lot of discussion about race in the play. Othello's he's a Moor. And there's a lot of indication that Iago is also motivated by his racism towards Othello. And he's got this, there's this stereotype of barbaric behavior from the Moors. And it comes out that it's a little easier for people to believe that Othello would behave in this way because of the racism. And I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this play, but overall, everyone is kind of ruined by jealousy. Like, what stems from jealousy and insecurity is kind of the downfall of everyone in this play, except for Cassio. Cassio's fine.
Somebody has to
Othello
live at the end in order to tell the story, right? Shakespeare always has somebody at the end who's like, and I will carry on. My strongest memory of this play in high school, I took a English lit class and we read a bunch of Shakespeare. We didn't read this particular play, but we watched a lot of movie versions of Shakespeare plays that all starred Laurence Olivier.
Oh, yeah.
And he did Othello in blackface, and it's so disturbing to look at as a modern audience. I hope it was disturbing for people at the time as well. And we had a whole conversation about it, and that was why we didn't watch the movie in my high school English class. It was like, this is really
Makes
not
sense.
okay.
Meanwhile, in my high school English class, years later, we 100% watched that.
I guess
stuff.
Shout out to my high school
down here
English teacher, Richard Tappan, for being more progressive. He was an excellent teacher. So I'm not surprised that he was a little bit more progressive than some others, but
that is kind of
yeah.
nice. I mean, I like the Lawrence Fishburne Othello from the 90s. I've watched that. I thought that was fun. And then there's O, which is an even more modern interpretation of it, which isn't terrible. It's interesting. But that's a tricky one, I feel like, to get right.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Gotta be careful.
Yeah. I wonder what they're doing. Sure. This is a tangent, but for Shakespeare in the Park this summer in Boston.
That sounds fun.
I love Shakespeare in the Park. It's really... There's nothing that makes me feel more like, I don't know, bougie than having like a fancy picnic and watching Shakespeare in a pretty park. It's just...
That is kind of cool.
It's fun. It's a good date. there's usually like a pretty like chill scene of everybody like hanging out on the lawn, because you get there early to get the good seats. So there's like a whole pre-show vibe that's fun. I remember we had strawberry shortcake with us one year, and people around us were all like, "Oh, you brought whipped cream." Like, yeah. Anyway, tangent.
I was like one tiny smidge to add to that tangent, so people don't think all I do is talk bad about where I live. But one of my favorite things that happens in a city nearby, the college has a replica of the Globe Theater.
Oh, cool. And
it is amazing. And every year they have a Shakespeare festival, and they'll do kind of, like a sampling of a bunch of the funnier or more notorious portions of plays and put that on, and they choose a different play every year to do. And last year was Romeo and Juliet, and so I'm really excited to see what they're going to do coming up. But that is one of the most like a cultural perk of where I am, is this exact replica pretty much for the Globe Theater, and having them put on Shakespeare.
That's cool.
It's just fun.
That is very cool.
Now I want to, oh man. And I love that Buffy seems to work in Shakespeare. The writers are clearly, we've talked about this before, they're very educated.
Yeah.
And none of this is a coincidence. They knew what working in Othello meant for the storyline. And that just makes me exceptionally happy.
Yeah. The whole season, I think, is inspired by Othello. And this idea of a dark half and sowing jealousy and chaos, which is what Faith is, right? She's just, she's an agent of chaos. And then, we've talked a lot about the dark mirrors and all these different characters who mirror each other in different ways.
Kind of perfect. Do you have anything about the, let's see, the obituary section in their high school newspaper?
I never know if that is a joke that Oz is making, or if there really is an obit section in the paper. It works either way. It's because it's Sunnydale, so probably, because I've heard people say that about the regular newspaper all the time, right? Like about like the Boston Globe or the New York Times, like, oh, I just skipped to the obits, and it's like, that's dark. And of course, Oz would be dark and droll about it. My favorite thing in the news about the newspaper is when they're in the office, you can see these past headlines in the newspaper that are like framed. And there's teachers fail competency exam, dropouts find happiness, and apathy on the rise, no one cares.
That's the best.
It's the best one.
Oh my God.
I didn't know that's where I got that from. As usual, I have I've said that joke, and I didn't know I stole it from Buffy. But it's a perfect joke. No one cares about the apathy being on the rise. It's perfect. I also love the music review of Dingoes Ate My Baby as playing their instruments like they have fat Polish sausages taped to their fingers. And then Oz being like, that's fair.
Like that checks out.
That goes right up with the like, other bands can play more than 3 chords. Like, he is very realistic about their band.
4. Sometimes maybe 5. God, that's good.
It's just fruity jazz bands.
I freaking love Oz.
He's so great.
He's got some of the best.
He has great one-liners in this.
One-liners.
It was intense. Yeah, for a minute there, I thought you were going to make an expression.
Well, I felt one coming on, I won't lie.
He's so precious.
He's droll and dry and just constantly hilarious. Like when Buffy's like, oh, I thought I saw a 4-legged demon, but it was a dog. He's like, a were dog? No, regular.
Yeah.
His lines are just always good.
Or
when
so quick.
When Willow freaks out and leaves, he's like, I'm going to follow the redhead. Like, he's also consistent about Willow is his priority, no matter what.
When he calls her the redhead, I don't know what it is, but it makes me want to like giggle and kick my feet.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so cute. I'm like, aw, that's his redhead.
Yeah. Aww.
But his another one of his lines absolutely slays me in this episode. When they're going around trying to, talk to everyone, and they're interviewing them for the yearbook, trying to figure out who this possible shooter is, and he's talking to that Hogan guy.
Oh yeah,
and
I love that scene.
He's like, "This is for the yearbook." It's like, yeah, personality profiles, and he's like, well, "Can you ask me again?" And Oz says, "Do you ever feel that you've created a false persona for yourself, the guy who does everything right, and how much of a strain does it put on you to maintain it?" And he's just like, "Huh. I guess moderate strain? Is that a good answer? I want to get this right." It's just like, oh my gosh.
It's so perfect.
It's just so clever. It cracks me up.
And then it cuts to Cordelia. Mr. Beach, were you planning on murdering a bunch of people today?
Yeah.
It's for the yearbook.
Yeah, it's for the year. And her smile.
Yeah.
It's like, it's for the yearbook. That's perfect. It's great. They just have these characters so nailed down and their personalities so fleshed out. It's a joy to watch them. And even in little scenes, it's just, chef's kiss. And I will say, one thing that always sticks with me in this episode is, with ADHD brain, and I know that you've dealt with this too, that overthinking and like the thoughts that just won't stop. When Buffy is walking through the hallway and everything starts to get to be too much, and it's just like that buildup of all of these negative thoughts where, I think she hears things like, I hate my body, nobody's ever gonna love me,
the test is today,
I hate her. Yeah, like all of these moments. I was like, this is how anxiety feels sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially with ADHD. I was like, this is kind of perfect. And on top of that, it's just such a brilliant way to capture the anxiety of being a teenager.
Yeah.
On top of that, they capture the insecurities about your body or about love or the tests. And then all of a sudden, she hears this time tomorrow I'll kill you all. Which would be jarring.
Yes.
But it's just, I think this episode is kind of underrated.
Yeah.
When people discuss Buffy's best episodes.
I think people focus on the Columbine thing and the fact that it aired out of order, and that becomes the conversation. But there's so much goodness in the episode. I see Buffy's predicament as kind of a metaphor for compassion fatigue. And it's something I'm really battling right now in my own life as I look at what's going on in the world. And it's interesting. I read some news about a decision that had to do with the Ukraine army and its ongoing war with Russia. And I was like, oh my God, I've been so focused on Israel and Palestine, I completely forgot that Russia is still trying to annex Ukraine.
And that is still happening.
There's so much horribleness going on in the world that you cannot focus on all of it. And even when you do focus on it, but just by human nature, over time, your compassion starts to drop off because otherwise you'd go insane. Like Buffy was going insane hearing everyone's pain. And I don't know what the answer is to compassion fatigue. I think, again, we go back to this. We need to remember
boundaries.
We're all part of a community and share the load, right? Like it's, there's a metaphor about activism that it's like a choir, and that a choir can maintain continuous sound because people take turns breathing when you're singing all together. And it's nice. The same with feeling compassion for world events or tragedies is you got to take a breath And the only way it's possible for everyone to take breaths and take care of themselves is if we share the load and trade the load back and forth between us. And we need a sense of community for that. And I don't know that American culture has that.
No. The closest, and it's difficult with some of the things that are going on in the United States right now, especially as a woman, not to have a bit more of a myopic viewpoint. And I have to keep reminding myself, there are people dealing with much more serious things, but then something comes up in my state or the state next door that just feels insurmountable and utterly exhausting, that I think we talked about this before, like having to stop watching the news for a while, having to stop taking in negative information to protect your peace, essentially, for a little while. That's one of the only things that I've found that really helps. Because I'm going to think about it. I'm an overthinker by nature. If I see one TikTok about something happening in Gaza, it's going to be in my brain for quite a while. And I get that where I start feeling guilty for not thinking or reflecting or doing something that can be kind of toxic too. So maybe that's why this episode hits so hard. It just works on so many levels, showing how burnt out you can be. And I can't imagine Buffy, like Sarah Michelle Gellar does a wonderful job with her facial expressions and showing how pained she is just taking in all of those thoughts, that you feel for her in that moment. And then having to hear on top of that Giles worrying about her going insane and how they don't know if there's a cure, they can fix it. Like, that's not helpful.
No.
It's just it's an intense episode that ends in a fairly lighthearted way.
Yeah. I mean,
the little plot twist.
Yeah, the lunch lady scene is funny, right? Like, first we have Xander being distracted by Jell-O. Like, Jell-O? Come on. If it was pudding, maybe. But, like, Jell-O? Who cares? And then,
like, Xander, you have terrible taste.
That amazing moment where he sees the lunch lady. She's got that giant box that says rat poison on it.
And huge letters.
And their eyes meet, and they're both like, it's like high noon, right? Like, who's going to draw first? Mm-hmm. And then, violence erupts. Xander has the great moment of, like, turning tables over and knocking people's food out of their hands. Like, pure chaos. That. It's so funny. Can you imagine if you were in your high school cafeteria and someone started doing that? You'd be like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And then,
that would have been
the lunch lady coming out with a butcher knife. Like, could anything be funnier than a butcher knife? Like, rah! It's so horror movie. And
it's so good.
When Buffy grabs her wrist and tries to talk to her, and then she's like, I don't see this being solved with logic, and, like, just basically, like, beats the crap out of the lunch lady.
Yeah.
We never get to find out, like, what the lunch lady's problem was, but I mean, I get
teenagers can be.
I wouldn't want to work at a high school cafeteria and be called lunch lady all the time. And
kids are assholes.
Yeah, like, she's right. They are vermin. I mean, I wouldn't want to kill them. I'd quit my job. But, it's Sunnydale where the Hellmouth energy is...
That's got to make it worse.
Soaking into you. And it's really funny to me. She's like, and you eat filth. And I'm like, is she calling them filth? Or has she been feeding them filth? Like, what's in the high school food?
I know.
And then I remembered, like, how grossed out I was in high school by the cafeteria offerings and how I just pretty much only ate from the salad bar. Because I was like, I don't know what they're putting in that food, and it doesn't look good.
It's just so special.
Yeah, but she's great. I mean, she's really funny.
So funny. Like, the look on her face and Nicholas Brendan in that moment is perfect. Like, they just the comedic timing, they nail it. And then, of course, ending on Buffy making that quip to Giles about, what did she say? So, like, as long as you're not having sex with my mother.
I'm glad to see you've recovered from your psychic encounter more or less intact. Feel up to some training?
Sure. We can work it after school. You know, if you're not too busy having sex with my mother.
It's so good.
There's two guys in the background, like, you know, extras, who watch that scene and react to her saying sex with my mother. They kind of widen their eyes, and then they see like, Giles walk into the tree. And I'd never noticed them before, juicy. But I was like, oh, that's a nice little touch. Like, those guys are like, whoa, look at that.
Funny.
I mean,
I love it so much.
There's got to be a part of Buffy that thinks, like, well, if Giles and my mom got together, that would kind of be like a family. But it's too overwhelmed by, like, nobody should be having sex with my mother. And nobody should be having sex with Giles. Like, she doesn't like to think of them as... She
can't see Giles as a sexual being.
Yeah, like, that's too much.
I remember that with adults or teachers. I was just like, no, you don't have sex. That's not a thing.
Oh my God. So I don't know if I should keep this in, but I went on a school trip to the USSR when I was in high school, when it was still the USSR. And two of the teacher chaperones on the trip hooked up. And they were each married to somebody.
Oh, no.
And they hooked up when we were on the train. I mean, I don't know if they hooked up otherwise, but they were like in a compartment and we all knew what was happening. And
what the hell?
It was an eye-opening experience for all of the kids on the trip. We were like,
that sounds
whoa,
about right.
That's happening. And
the lack of self-control is astounding.
Yeah. A lot of stuff happened on that trip that should not have happened. Like, I got drunk with my U.S. history teacher.
Oh my God. Goodness gracious.
Like, really drunk.
Man, you know, social media has done some good.
Yeah.
People are more scared of consequences and things spreading quickly. That's intense.
Yeah.
Although there was one of our teachers that, I mean, he was attractive. Poor guy. He was fresh out of college, and the boys in our AP physics class basically tormented our teacher so much that she quit in the middle of the school year. It was horrible. And they brought this guy in who had just graduated from UT. And he was an attractive guy. He'd played baseball. Like, he was a good looking guy. And the girls in our class and in school in general, the things that they would say to him outright and like proposition him, he ended up putting photos of him and his girlfriend all over the bulletin board behind his desk. And ultimately, one of the girls like saw him at a bar or something and took a picture, like a selfie of her, like with him in the background. You could just see him, and told everyone that she had met him for a drink there. Ultimately, they did some sort of investigation within the school board, and it wasn't true. But she got him fired because he would not sleep with her.
Yeah.
When she propositioned him, and she ended up admitting it and stuff like that. Like, I think that's fairly rare. I will say that actual situation is fairly rare, but
there's a great Veronica Mars episode about this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a young female teacher at my high school who was dating a sophomore. Yeah, and a lot of people knew about it.
Huh.
And at the time, I didn't really think it was that messed up.
Yeah.
At the time, I kind of was like, okay. And now I'm like, ew, I should have told someone.
Yeah.
Like,
getting perspective.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that was not normal.
Yeah. I mean, there is a reason why teenagers aren't in charge of things, right? That They're dumb. Like, I was dumb to think that that was okay. I didn't understand the world or how power differentials worked, and I thought I was so mature. And I wasn't. I was a kid, and I didn't know, and that guy was not mature enough to be having a sexual relationship with a full adult, and God only knows what other stuff happened that I don't know about. That's just the stuff I know about, you know?
Speaking of, it's funny you say teenagers shouldn't be in charge, which is absolutely true. But there's that realization that's kind of become a meme that's been going around recently where it shows the ages of the founding fathers.
Oh, yeah.
In 1776, and multiple are like 18, 19, 20, 21, 25. And it's like that's interesting.
Yeah.
They didn't have fully developed prefrontal cortexes at the time that they were making all of these giant decisions.
And when you think about it, it's not at all surprising that a revolution was started by a bunch of teenagers. Right?
Yep,
like
in early 20s, like that makes complete sense to me.
They were like, we've got guns. They probably were drunk and they were like, let's fight the king. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it worked. Like, now we're
You have to have a little bit of audacity.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be a little bit reckless.
And a little stupid. I think that sometimes people like you and me who overthink and plan and see risks don't accomplish things that dumber people can accomplish. Because
100%.
We stop ourselves. We're like, oh, but if that went wrong, it would go so wrong. And and meanwhile, there's like some dumbass who's like, I'll just go right ahead and, you know.
Yep. I am not a risk taker.
No.
That is not.
Somebody recently
in my
asked me, like what are some of the things that, you know, what are some trauma responses that you've had? And I'm like, law school.
Yeah.
Like my entire legal career was basically just a trauma response. And they were like, whoa. And I was like, yeah, like I picked the least risky career I could think of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that still made
sense.
money. And it didn't make me not have trauma. So that was dumb.
I do that. I distracted myself for years with law school. I was all in. And I couldn't think about anything else.
Yeah.
I didn't have time.
It's really good for that. Law school is.
Yeah.
It takes up all of your time and energy. And the only energy you have left is pretty much all used for drinking. And
oh gosh, yeah.
And partying with
law
students. Yeah.
They will drink, like, you know, obviously on a serious note, lawyers as a profession, there's a lot of alcohol abuse and substance abuse, but I saw people drink more heavily in law school than I did in college. Like,
oh yeah,
college drinking was nothing compared to law students drinking.
And I went to law school in New York City, and so you know, we're all over 21 and bars are everywhere. So the access to booze was unlimited, and every social event was booze related, booze centered. And then you start going to like law firm recruiting events, and they just start giving you booze. And then you go to a law firm, and then they give you booze, and then they give you more booze, and then there's more booze, and like there was
it's everywhere.
Yeah, as a profession, it's like I can't even think about a lawyer office without a carafe of like scotch or something on the table, because so many people keep booze in their office.
And if it's not on the table, it's in a desk drawer.
Yep.
Like, it's still there.
It's there. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. One of the law firms that we work with pretty frequently has like a full-on bar in their office.
Yeah.
It's next to their kitchen. And just every time I'm there for like a mediation or something, I'm just like, this is healthy, guys.
Yeah.
Good job. Like, this is not great. But at least it's better than having frickin' milk sitting out in your office like the mayor.
Yeah, that's still
there.
worse.
I tied it back to Buffy.
It's still worse. The milk is still worse. It's disgusting.
So gross.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Okay. All right.
We talked a little bit about the UT Tower shooting.
Yeah.
That was pretty infamous when I was growing up, and I don't know if that was nationwide or if it was just because I grew up, in Texas with people who had been present. But for those that don't know, it was back in August 1st of 1966 at the University of Texas in Austin, where a 25-year-old, I believe he was a ex-Marine, went up into the famous UT Tower and started firing down at members of the public, students, and he ended up killing 15 people, and that's including a woman who was pregnant at the time. That unborn child is counted among them, and injured 31 other people before he was finally taken down by a couple of police officers. But I cannot see this episode without thinking about that, because that's one of the reasons why I bought in like hook, line, and sinker that it was Jonathan as soon as he was up in that clock tower.
Oh, yeah. And I think it's a direct reference.
Like, oh, no.
The clock tower thing
has to be.
Is so specific that it has to be a reference. And let's face it, he had a sniper rifle, right? He didn't have a handgun or something. So it really did look like he was planning on shooting up that courtyard area where all the kids are hanging out. And
like, it just seemed too spot on.
Yeah, I think it's a very direct and intentional reference to that Texas shooting, that tower shooting.
Which is terrifying. Like, and I think of the DC sniper too.
God.
Like the idea that, at any point in time, somebody could open fire. And I
just out of
think
nowhere.
About that anytime.
Yeah.
Like anytime I'm in a public place. So going to Europe's going to be super fun. But
way less guns in Europe. Way less guns.
True. Especially where I'm going.
Yeah.
So,
during the DC sniper thing, I had just been in DC, like a couple days before that happened, and I had been in several of those locations. Like I had been at that Home Depot, and I had been at the gas station, and I was like, it so easily could have been me or my family that got shot. Like.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to Home Depot. There was all of us there. Like that was so scary.
You know what? I think that you saying that kind of made me think on another level of why Columbine sticks out so much to me, because it was one of the first times that I thought, this could easily happen to me.
Yeah.
Like this could happen at my school. And once you can personalize it, that just kind of hits you a little bit differently. And Xander and Cordelia and Oz, when they're talking about, Buffy's revelation that she's heard someone contemplating killing a bunch of the students, it's a conversation that when I watch it now kind of gives me chills when Xander's like, I'm still having trouble with, the whole one of us is just going to gun everybody down for no reason. And Cordelia makes that quip like, yeah, because that never happens in American high schools.
Still having trouble with the fact that one of us is just going to gun everybody down for no reason.
Yeah, because that never happened in American high schools.
It's bordering on trendy at this point.
Besides which, Sunnydale High, center of evil and all that?
Like, it is horrible that almost 30 years later from Buffy airing, this is still a thing.
Yeah.
And it's even worse.
Yeah, it's so much worse.
But hearing that
now.
Exchange this time around, I was just like, oh, that's painful.
It really is.
I don't like that. Just not good.
Because of the way I grew up and having gone to elementary school on a military base, I have always kind of felt like violence was right outside the door.
That makes sense.
I remember at one point after one of the many, many, many school shootings, the movement on the other side, the anti-gun control people, were like, what we need to do is arm the teachers and have armed cops in the schools. And I was like, I lived with that, and it doesn't make things better. You just
That'll do something to your psyche.
All your time looking at the guns. Like, yeah. And
that's Texas's solution.
Yeah,
right
just
now.
guns everywhere. And it's like, no, that just makes everybody more afraid and jumpy and jittery and more likely to shoot each other. I am a firm believer that in the statistic that more people who keep guns in their house for self-defense end up being killed by their own gun than people who end up defending themselves or their family with that gun.
Yeah.
I have used that as a reason for my parents never to get a gun, like, so many times.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, this is what'll happen.
People aren't really, you don't know what you're doing. You can go buy a gun with no training, at least where I am. I don't know what other states have at this point, but in a lot of states, there's no class that's required for you to own a gun in your home if you're keeping it for protection. And the number of even quote unquote responsible and experienced gun owners I've seen, do something that either resulted in them shooting themselves in the foot or a gun going off in a courthouse
or killing their kid accidentally.
Yeah, just it makes me so nervous because with me, I would trust myself with a gun because I've been taught exactly what to do. I know how it works. I know what not to do, but I don't trust anybody else. And I still wouldn't want to, it makes me anxious. And the fact that we want to make it more wide open for inexperienced people to obtain guns doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I guess we could have put a gun control discussion warning at the beginning of this episode. I don't know how many of our listeners have strong feelings opposing gun control. Yeah.
I went on a date with this guy one time who turned out to be a libertarian of the strongest variety of libertarian, and he was arguing to me about how he shouldn't have to have a car registration because it's not the government's business whether or not he has a car, and then
very libertarian.
And I was like, do you feel the same way about guns? And he was like, absolutely. I should be able to have a gun and not have to tell anyone I have it. What about my right for freedom? And I go, what about my right to not get shot? And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, what is to stop you from hitting someone with your car or shooting someone and getting away with it because nobody can track down whose car it was or whose gun it was? And he says to me, oh, I never really thought about people who get shot. And I was like, clearly, because your entire system falls apart once you take those people into consideration. I understand the appeal of libertarian beliefs when you think you are the model of who's going to be self-governing. But there are so many people who are not good at self-control, who should not have things that can kill other people easily without some kind of accountability, being registered, having to take a safety class. He thought driver's licenses and driving tests shouldn't exist. And at this point I already knew that this was going to be a one date only situation. Yeah. But then he was a musician and he said he wanted to busk around Europe just couch surfing. And and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. How long do you think you would do that for? Expecting the answer to be for the summer. And what he said was 7 or 8 years. And I was like, you're a ridiculous person on many levels. Thank you for the coffee. I gotta go.
Yeah, it's we are not compatible.
Yeah, wow. You want to spend 7 or 8 years couch surfing and this guy was...
That is so stressful.
My age. And at the time, I think I was 40. So a 40-year-old thinks he's gonna couch surf for 7 or 8 years. I just...
Jeez. That's intense.
I was like, dude, your back's gonna give out. Like, okay.
I know. I couldn't sleep on a couch for that long.
Yeah, the whole thing was
There's no
hilarious.
way.
I met him actually from
Aw.
this is embarrassing, a Craigslist misconnection.
That's kind of cool, though. Like, I always wonder what happens and how many of those actually end up connecting again.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Because he, like, smiled at me and stuff. I was waiting outside of a coffee shop for a different date. And and we sort of made eyes at each other and stuff. And then I posted a misconnection. I've never done that. And then I got an email and he's like, I think I'm the guy in your misconnection. And I'm like, like, okay, what were you wearing? And he had been wearing a very distinctive hat. And I was like, yeah, that's you.
That's so crazy.
And then we met for coffee.
Too bad that didn't work out, because that would have been a great story.
Yeah, just goes to show you, meet in a public place and don't give out your last name.
Oh, yeah. The number of guys on dating apps that have been offended if I didn't want to ride.
Yeah.
I'm just like, bro, no. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why is that so hard to understand? That's a red flag.
Somebody I recently was dating was telling me this story, and he was super offended by it, about another woman he had gone out with who said to him, well, I checked the sex offender registry in your neighborhood and nobody with your name is on it. So that's good. And he was like, what about me made her think she needed to check that? And I was like, dude, it's not about you. It's
about
like somebody
safety.
There was some reason that she checks that for guys that she goes on first dates with. Like, she found out probably the hard way.
Actually, that's a good idea.
It's not about you. It's about some other guy she went out with. And like, you're not on the registry,
rather than just
so
Googling.
Just be happy about it.
It's weird that he got so offended. It's like the whole man versus bear thing that's been a trend lately. The guys that are getting super personally offended. It's like, maybe some self-reflection, bud.
Yeah.
As to why you're taking this personally.
It's like, you won't even take no for an answer in a hypothetical example. So you're really just proving the point about the bears.
Yep. It's like, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Bear every day. I choose bear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I would see, my problem is I don't know, if it was a grizzly bear, I would probably have the proper fear response and react, because grizzlies are terrifying. But I've come across black bears before.
They mostly
like in
leave
Big
you alone.
Bend. Yeah, if you yell, like, they're the ones usually, if you yell, hey bear, and you don't have food, like, near you, they'll go away. But I wish they were.
And if you do have food near you,
I could hug one.
Abandon the food.
Yeah, don't try to.
And the bear will go for the food, and you can leave.
Yep. Like a black bear most likely can't swat my head off in one swipe like a grizzly bear can.
Grizzlies are legit terrifying, but also they don't attack every single time they see a person, right? Only if they feel threatened.
It's true.
Like, most of the time they'll leave you alone because they're like, whatever. Like, people don't even taste that good unless it's Cocaine Bear. And
I loved that movie. It was so dumb, but it was just absurd.
It was really fun.
Oh my
and then
gosh,
when the closing credits started and that song White Lines came on, I had forgotten that song entirely, and now it's on like several playlists.
Yep.
Because it is such a
good one.
It's such a bop. I love it so much. All right, we are so off topic.
I know. Well, that made me think of freaking Principal Snyder walking around with Walk Like an Egyptian stuck in his head. Yeah. And I was just like, I could see that.
That's good.
There could have been some
good earworm.
Yep. Walk like Egyptian.
I want to talk about the fashion in this episode a little bit. Willow's fashion for once was really unobjectionable. There was the yellow bucket hat, but at least it kind of went with her outfit, so I can live with it. The kitty t-shirt was amazing. I want one of those.
I love that shirt.
Oh, it's so good. She was wearing like super bedazzled jeans with it, but like whatever. It's the 90s. That was in. Buffy's outfits in this episode. I remember the first time I saw this episode and I was like, Buffy's wardrobe has really gone up a notch. Like, first of all, she's in that like pencil skirt tank top outfit where she just looks so elegant and effortlessly gorgeous, and she's got like awesome hair. And then
I would wear that today. Like, that's still
I couldn't pull it off, but she looked amazing. And then
like, she looks great.
The outfit when she stops Jonathan, the white pants and like a blue sweater, I like went out and bought that outfit. I was like, I gotta wear that. And that's back then I was blonde, so it was very clear that I was dressing like Buffy. That's and I have been looking for boots like the ones she wears in the final scene. She's wearing these like black chunky suede boots. I've never found boots like that. They're so good. She looks so sophisticated and not like a high school student, but not in a suit like Cordelia. They put Cordelia in
like her little cardigan
suits
that she's wearing, like in the classroom scene. It's just so like she looks very nice and put together and mature, but not overly.
Yeah, she doesn't look like
mature.
She's 25. She looks like a well-dressed high school kid, whereas Cordelia looks like she's on her way to her paralegal job again. In like
she really does. Even the way they do her hair.
Yeah, she also looks like she's going to a beauty pageant. Like her hair is like very beauty pageant this season. It's really weird.
It's like if it were airing today, Cordelia would be hitting up like a blow dry bar or something every morning to get her hair blown out.
Yeah.
Like that is how professionally done it looks to me.
So ridiculous. And in the
blow dry bars are a nice invention.
I've never been to one.
Anyway.
In the pep squad scene, Xander is wearing a bright yellow sweater that's very not Xander. But it's like the school colors, and I'm like, I guess that's school spirit, but ew. I'm not a fan of yellow in general. I don't think it looks good on most white people. And
that's true. Except for Kate Hudson in How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That is the one time that
she's like
I've
not
seen...
human. She's so pretty.
No. That yellow dress that she wore is like I don't imagine anybody else really being able to do that. But it looked good on her.
Yeah. Yellow mostly looks good on people with dark skin, and the rest of us should just accept that. I'm about to go to my college reunion this weekend, and every class has a class color that's assigned at it's assigned by the college, and our class color is yellow, and we're supposed to like wear yellow for like this one event, and every year I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like I'm not wearing yellow. I don't
think I own anything yellow.
No. A few years ago, like at the last reunion, a bunch of people bought and brought with them all these like yellow party supplies, like feather boas and big giant yellow sunglasses and stuff like that, and handed them out, and we were all like, oh, okay, we'll wear these.
That's
works. Okay. I'm not buying a yellow outfit for my reunion. Like, no, thank you. And we're Gen X, right? So it's hilarious. Like the other classes, there's this parade, and the other classes are all in their color. They're green, red, blue, like, and they're all like coordinated. And our class is like this mishmash of like black and blue and gray. And we're like, it's Gen X, whatever.
That's hilarious.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. What did you think of Xander's lovely button-up shirt? That's like, I mean, it kind of reminded me of the Mexican flag because it's got green, red, and white, or Italian.
He wears a lot of button-downs.
When I saw that,
and color,
with the collar kind of exaggerated, and popped. I was like, Xander. He reminds me of the guys in high school that, and kind of in Clueless, where they would kind of be 50s inspired.
It's also sort of Chandler from Friends. Like Chandler wore a lot of those like Cuban style shirts.
That's true.
And bowling shirts.
Chandler.
Like that was big in the 90s was
shirts.
Bowling shirts.
The one fashion influence I took from this episode when I watched it in 5th grade were the cow print pajamas that Buffy's wearing.
They're so cute.
I went to the mall like a week after I remember seeing this episode, and it was kind of like right after back to school. So it was still in the mode of like, oh, I could get like some newer, more grown up things, because it was going to be my first, year in middle school. And I went into Charlotte Russe and they had cow print pajamas like Buffy's, and I snatched those up so fast. I freaking loved those pajamas.
That is awesome.
They were so
Buffy over the years has several pajama ensembles that are real cute.
Mm-hmm.
And
Buffy college years pajamas are good.
Yeah. Her fashion in general, this is when it takes a real uptick, is in season 3, and especially the end of season 3. Like, she's going to look fantastic from here on out.
Isn't this when Sarah Michelle Gellar started having more input in what Buffy wore?
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. Like, that tracks.
Because in season 1, like, it's very clearly sort of like teenage mall store clothes that she's wearing in season 1 and most of season 2, and they often don't fit her quite right. Like, it's like off the rack, they didn't even tailor it, and then from here on out everything is a perfectly perfect fit. The fabrics are more high end, like there's a lot more like silk and leather and angora tailored, and everything is like, the colors are good, like it's a real improvement. And unfortunately,
it's just so classic.
They just keep dressing Willow crazy for a long time.
I know. It's awful.
Oh my God.
I mean, yellow bucket hat, those are in again. Bucket hats have come back.
I mean, I have a bucket hat. It's great.
They're practical.
But I wouldn't have worn it to school. I mean, I wear it when I go kayaking and stuff.
I was like, I think I had a denim bucket hat.
Of course you did. That's
kind of blossomy.
Yep. Did it have a big flower on it?
Yeah, like a sunflower on it. And there's a picture of, I had a matching one for my American Girl doll, Samantha.
That's so sweet.
And there's a picture, I love that so much, but there's a picture of me and my dog Josie where I have the hat on and I put the little American Girl doll hat on her, and she looks like she's hating her life. And it's one of my favorite pictures. But God, that hat, now that I think about it, it's a very special hat.
That's real tacky.
Yep. It was awful.
Love it. In this episode, we get a couple of great character moments. Willow takes charge of the investigation, and it's hilarious. She's like, use the sample questions. Like, she's such a wannabe teacher, right? She likes being in charge.
Yeah.
Giles and Wesley are actually working well together. And when Giles has a moment of like frustration and despair, Wesley's like, negative thoughts never helped. Who's going to get the demon heart? And it actually helps Giles figure out that Angel can get the demon heart. And I was like, Wesley was helpful in that moment. And I did not remember that Wesley is at Buffy's house when Angel shows up with the heart and, in fact, lets Angel in. I didn't remember that he was involved in that part of it at all. And I'm like, wow, he's like really being a team player in this episode. That's great.
It's
after Enemies, when he was such a fink.
That was annoying.
Yeah.
I did also bring up Angel. I loved the conversation between him and Buffy. We talked about it earlier when she's kind of seeing if she can read his mind. And he tells her, I've only loved one person. And she's like, oh, it is me, right? And what does he say where she's like, funny? And he goes, I'm a funny guy.
Yeah, completely deadpan.
It's so
Here,
good.
I have it, of
because
course.
David Boreanaz, perfect.
Like, the thing about Faith, I'd understand. She has that whole bad girl thing working for her.
Kissing her meant nothing. I don't want a bad girl. I've done that before. I've lived a long time, Buffy, and I'm past that. I've been with dozens of girls like her. More.
Oh, this
Helpful
honestly
Angel.
is fun.
And there's no comparison. 243 years, I've loved exactly one person.
Oh.
It is me, right?
Next time, just ask.
Okay.
Buffy, be careful with this gift. A lot of things that seem strong and good and powerful, they can be painful.
Like, say, immortality?
Exactly. I'm dying to get rid of that.
Fun?
I'm a funny guy.
I'm a funny guy.
Good.
It's like, David Boreanaz is funny. Angel is not funny.
Oh, yeah. That's why I feel like he shines through, like actual David Boreanaz shines through a little bit more when he's playing Sealy Booth and Bones. That seems consistent with his personality. But anytime Angel delivers something funny, it hits even better just because he's so stoic.
Yeah. Mopey,
Just
broody.
Like, oh, man.
I love that his protection from the sun is just like a curtain. Like, and he's walking into the sunlight. Like, dude, be more afraid of sunlight.
Well, and Buffy, is she not essentially waking him up in the middle of the night in his equivalent? Because she went over there like right after school. It's still daytime.
It's the middle of the school day, I think. So yeah,
isn't it?
But he was
he
up.
not sleeping?
But yeah, it's a little bit like dropping in on someone in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, when he says, "I've been with dozens of girls like that," more, I was like, oh, Buffy does not want to hear that, man. Like, don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to throw in the dozens.
Yeah, that was
not
unnecessary,
helping.
but it is a good point that he makes. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, those girls are all the same, and not inspiring. They don't make me love them. Like, I love you because you're not like that. And it is what she needed to hear. He also says in this episode, "I'll always be with you," which is foreshadowing, and I'd love you even if you were covered with slime, which is sweet.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it could happen that she'd be covered with slime and she won't like it, but he's a vampire.
True.
Like, he's not going to care.
Yeah. What's a little slime in the grand scheme of things?
Yeah, seriously.
It's fine. Oh my gosh. I just love everything about this episode.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I think you're right, the conversation around it gets focused on Columbine and it being rescheduled, which also, I guess, Graduation Day Part 2 was also rescheduled because of Columbine. It was a little bit later, and I had forgotten that.
Yeah, it was a volatile time.
That's for sure. Ugh.
I think I remember being glad that it was rescheduled because I was so busy that I didn't have time to watch it, and I was like, good. I'll watch it later.
That makes sense. Yeah, because we didn't have DVR and streaming services and all that jazz.
Exactly, yeah.
When did TiVo start? I feel like I remember
like
people
2002.
getting TiVo, right? Fairly early.
Yeah.
Let's see. TiVo invented.
All right, I just noticed that you put in our script for today, lesson learned, cafeteria food isn't worth the risk sometimes.
I couldn't think of, I was like, what's a fun discussion point to put there? It made me giggle.
Oh, God.
Oh, gosh.
I think we've...
we've talked about the things.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Oh, the one other thing I couldn't decide whether to count this in my Giles getting knocked out tally that we've gone over before, because he does, he runs into the tree, but it doesn't seem like he gets knocked out.
Yeah, I don't think he's unconscious. He's fully awake after.
But that man has some bad luck when it comes to his head.
Yeah, he should start wearing a helmet.
It's just not good. He should.
Just like generally always have a helmet on. That'd be hilarious.
My only other note was like, poor Jonathan. He was already questioned during like the whole Go Fish incident by Willow, and he finally admitted to her to peeing in the pool. And now, although this time makes sense, he's up in the clock tower with the gun.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, buddy, you just can't get away.
Oh, and Willow says, "Oh, I had him in my grasp," which I think is a reference to the Buffy movie, because the Pee Wee Herman character says, "Oh, I had him in my grasp," and because his arm had gotten cut off, the other person goes, "Relax, you may still."
Yep. Yep, that's funny.
Yeah.
I could see that.
So I think that was a little nod to the movie. Pee Wee Herman's best performance. I know that's not his real name, but that's how I will always remember him.
Yeah, I'd rather remember him that way. And not because of that whole movie theater thing.
Yeah, let's not go there.
No, not fun. What's next?
Let's move on to pop, not so pop culture references. I think it's time.
Woohoo. Okay, so first up, when Buffy is talking about her itchy demon hand, she says, "No big, just another problem for the good people at Lubriderm, right?" And Lubriderm, of course, is a brand of body lotions made by Warner Lambert. I put this in there, this is probably not important, but they're very good lotions. I have a lot of Lubriderm, but I don't think they make anything specifically to relieve itching. So, plot hole.
You need cortisone or some other product for that. Buffy says Principal Snyder has "Walk Like an Egyptian" stuck in his head. "Walk Like an Egyptian" is a catchy little ditty released by the Bangles in 1986. And it was a phenomenon when it was released.
It slaps.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I feel so old saying that just now.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Okay. Next up, we have already talked about Othello, of course, written by Shakespeare, not at all pop culture, but it's about Iago convincing Othello that his wife Desdemona has been unfaithful, and we talked in depth about how that played out in this episode with the dynamics of Faith and Angel and Buffy's jealousy. Another fun fact that we talked about too is Aladdin is loosely based on Othello,
which I didn't put that together, even though I knew that the parrot was named Iago.
Yeah, and very loosely based on Othello, but lots of the same themes. Resentment's a big one. Anyway, this is not a Shakespeare or Disney podcast. Fine.
Xander says, "See, I've been saying for years that the lunch lady's gonna do us all in with that mulligan stew." And then I think he says, "What even is a mulligan anyway?" Mulligan stew is a stew consisting of meat, vegetables, or any on-hand ingredients, probably named after some Irish guy named Mulligan.
That's funny. Oh, man. And obviously we talked about Oz's thoughts, his stoner Oz thoughts, saying, "I am my thoughts. If they exist in her, Buffy contains everything that is me, and she becomes me. I cease to exist." It's a reference to the first principle of Rene Descartes' philosophy, "I think, therefore I am." There was one more little bit of trivia or reference that I wasn't too sure about including because it's kind of dirty or vulgar, but I'll just tell you and we can decide whether or not you want to cut it. But something that Giles says when he calls Wesley an idiot and he says "Burke."
Oh, yeah.
Like that.
I meant to look that up.
Yep. Apparently, it's British slang, but it comes from the word berserk. Shortening that word is thought to be part of it. And then the slang term Berkshire hunt, if you shorten that, it's basically like saying cunt. So Giles was calling Leslie the British equivalent of a cunt.
Interesting.
Which is crazy to me, but I guess in the US at that time, like, nobody would have known what that meant.
Yeah. Well, it's like how they say bloody all over the place in Buffy.
Which is kind of like...
It's like the F word, yeah.
Yeah. I keep forgetting we're not supposed to...
It's okay. I've given up on caring about that. On to some trivia. Buffy's class discusses Shakespeare's Othello in the episode. In the original script, they were discussing Henry VIII, and you could still see this written on the board later in the episode. But JW rewrote the scene to make it have more meaning to Buffy's feelings. Interesting, because I sort of thought maybe Othello was in the mix, like, all along when they were writing the whole season, but maybe not.
I could see that. And we do know that Joss Whedon spent some time on, like, forums, Buffy forums, so I could 100% see, that was 2 words together, 100% see him seeing somebody make a comment somewhere in a forum about the parallels to Othello and be like, huh.
Yeah, I'll use that.
That's a good idea. Next, Jane Espenson has said that Joss Whedon normally hates having demons with tails on the show because the tails almost never look realistic. And so the demons in Earshot have tails, as Jane had written a joke about Buffy checking to see if she had one. So she kind of overwrote Joss's usual wishes there.
Anthony Stewart Head is the one that came up with the idea of Giles walking into the tree at the end of Earshot. And it's a brilliant idea because it's very funny.
That was brilliant. I love the episode ending on that. It's perfect. Let's see. In the original scene of Buffy fighting the telepathic demons, she said, "Say uncle. Oops, no mouth." That was deleted from the episode in its final cut. I probably would have giggled at that. Not the best, but it would have gotten a giggle.
The Sunnydale High clock tower was constructed especially for this episode.
Oh, that makes me think even more that it was directly on point to reference UT. And then Regis Kimball, who directed this episode, also designed the title sequence of the spinoff Angel.
I don't like
that was old.
The title sequence of Angel. It's one of my least favorite things about that show.
The music.
It's a bummer.
Fit. Yeah, it fits the first season, honestly.
Yeah, but like
kind of like but it doesn't get me like super pumped to start the episode.
Yeah, it's always like whereas the Buffy music is so awesome.
Iconic.
Yeah. All right.
So good.
This brings us to the part of the episode where I ask, does it still slay? You all know my answer.
Yep. Shocking no one. I think we both would agree that it still slays.
Super
relevant.
I think
this is, like I said, very relevant, underrated. It gets lost in the discussion of Buffy's best episodes sometimes, but I think it deserves to be pretty far up there.
It's fantastic.
It's just
the writing is great.
Very well done.
Yeah, the performances are great, and there's funny stuff, and yeah, it's a great episode. Slay all day. And it is time to head over to the Bronze and see what some of our listeners had to say.
Bronze things. Things of bronze.
We start off with Jolene, who sent us a nice long message. She says, I missed the enemy's feedback. In my defense, though, I was meeting Charisma Carpenter and Chris Berry from Red Dwarf at Comic-Con. You are 100% excused, Jolene. That is very, very cool. I think you said pretty much everything I would have said, though. My main point would have been that the second best moment from Angel and the slow motion look on Faith's face, you played me, is peak Buffy. I get goosebumps every time I see it. The fan fiction from Piotr was honestly exactly how I saw the behind-the-scenes planning between Buffy, Giles, and Angel going too. More of that, please. Yes. Anybody who wants to send us in fan fiction, we will perform it for you. We're excited to do it. Anyway,
seriously.
On to Earshot. Terrifyingly for me, because I refuse to believe I have a child that old because I am not old enough. The week this should have aired was the week I had my daughter. Oh, interesting. Well, happy birthday to your daughter somewhat recently. Brilliant episode before we move into the final few episodes and the culmination of the mayor plotline. Buffy's telepathy ability brings home just how scary and isolating it can be as a teenager. Her speech to Jonathan about how no one notices him because they all have their own stuff to deal with is so beautifully written, but the mind reading does also bring some very funny moments. The library scene is hysterical. Cordelia saying exactly what she is thinking is one of my favorite Buffy moments, along with Oz becoming philosophical. Buffy is all of us. We think, therefore she is. While the others are just stressing over not thinking about what they're actually thinking about. Laugh cry emojis. But
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like the fact that Oz is having some deep, like, philosophical reckoning while the rest of them, and Xander's just like, naked ladies.
Yeah, it really brings home the point that Oz is deeper and sort of more perfect than he has any right to be as a teenager. She goes on to say, Buffy finding out what happened between her mom and Giles on band candy night is another classic favorite Buffy moment. Got it. You had sex with Giles? On the hood of a police car? Twice?
That's so good.
It really is a fantastic moment. And a shout out to Band Candy, which remains one of my favorite episodes ever.
So good. And she goes on to say, obviously there's the more serious theme running through it too. Poor Jonathan, but yay for him being introduced as a more regular character. I know it wasn't shown in sequence because it was scheduled to air the week after Columbine, but the dialogue between Xander, Cordelia, and Oz, and the fact it was written and filmed before Columbine happened, was so eerily prophetic. And she has the quote of Xander saying, you know, I'm still having trouble with the fact that one of us is just going to gun everybody down for no reason. And Cordelia's, yeah, because that never happens in American high schools. And Oz's comment that it's bordering on trendy at this point. Yeah, that is definitely eerie still to this day. And she says the Scoobies having to manage without Buffy is always good to watch. Willow's inner interrogator revealing herself, and Cordelia's straight to the point, are you planning on killing a bunch of people tomorrow? It's for the yearbook, are so true to character. And for the second time this school year, it's Xander who saves the day.
Sort of accidentally.
The Sunnydale High... Yeah. Good job, Xand. She said the Sunnydale High newspaper has an obituary section? Why on earth did anyone stay living there? Oh, man. Yeah, if they actually have an obituary section in their high school paper. I mean, it's a nice touch either way. She said, I know the whole Buffy-Angel relationship is incredibly inappropriate, but I have to admit, I do love the scene when he gets the potion to her, even though it's daytime, and saves her life.
Yeah, I mean...
I never realized that is...
It's very romantic and
I mean, we all...
heroic.
We all understand why Buffy is attracted to Angel.
Yeah.
That checks out. She said, I never realized until this watch that Wesley... was in the house when that happened, though. Seen it about 30 times, so I really don't know how I missed it. Well, if it makes you feel better, Jolene Penny also had that realization this time around. She said, can you imagine if Joyce still wasn't in the know about Buffy being the Slayer, and there's all these British men in tweed really invested in her daughter's health in the house?
Yeah, that would have been highly confusing.
Funny. You know, just like, what the hell is going on? Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time again. Nah. So I'll leave you with my favorite quote. Oz, it was intense. Xander, yeah, for a minute there, I thought you were going to make an expression. And Oz, well, I felt one coming on. I won't lie. That is a great exchange in this episode.
So perfectly Oz. We got several voicemails this time, so I'm going to play those. We're going to start with our good buddy, Steve.
Hello, Still Slaying. This is Steve, and this is just a quick commentary on Earshot. I don't know when you're going to be able to actually, publish the podcast for it. It's a very triggering episode for a lot of people. I think it's well known. If you know Podcastica and you know me personally, I'm a Second Amendment supporter. So this is a tough episode. There's a lot of stuff in it that's again very triggering. I don't want to comment specifically on some of the things. I will say this though. I do love the fact that Cordelia, it's revealed that she says exactly what's on her mind, which I love. I think that's great as a character development and showing her her growth and what happens with her is the fact that she doesn't hold back. She just says exactly. She has no filter. She says exactly what she means. And the fact that we got to see a big part of Jonathan in there is great. Again, there's some triggering stuff, so I'm not going to get into that. We get to see Xander actually solve a mystery and figure things out, and I thought that was great. So I am going to watch the episode again, but I wanted to send this in real quick because my vague memories of the episode are those things. So talk to you later.
Thanks, Steve. So the fact that Steve is a Second Amendment supporter is not a big surprise to me, and I think I kind of knew that. I'm not opposed to the Second Amendment. I just am opposed to unfettered access to semi-automatic weapons.
Yeah, that's where I am. And I'll say that I don't know if we talked about it, but as a prosecutor, I had my license to carry. I own a gun. I'm not opposed to the Second Amendment. It's just having some sort of, regulation and control at this point. But I'm curious, Steve, how you thought of our coverage.
Yeah. Let us know. And we heard from Stuart, and Stuart is a new...
Hi, Penny and Cara. This is Stuart from Brisbane, Australia.
Yay!
Thanks so much for your podcast. It has given me the perfect excuse to rewatch Buffy. Just finished watching Earshot, and one thing that crossed my mind is why didn't Buffy use her mind-reading ability to learn more about the mayor's plans for graduation day? After all, the episode began with Giles and Wesley admitting that they had no idea what the mayor was planning for graduation day, so it would make sense for Buffy to use her new power for the most obvious need at that time.
It's a good point.
Actually, Buffy and her mind-reading power also reminded me of Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. When he first found the One Ring, he delighted in the invisibility power it gave him. However, before long, everyone shunned him because of it, similar to what happened to Buffy. And what was with Xander's shirt? It was like cheap Christmas wrapping paper.
Right?
And Cordy's hair looked wild this episode, like she stepped into a wind tunnel between takes. Thanks again, and keep slaying.
Thanks, Stuart.
Oh my gosh.
I hope you keep calling in.
That's funny.
I love the Australian accent.
Yes.
That's fantastic. I think that Stuart has called into my other podcast, Cast of the Rings, before. He sounds
nice.
familiar.
I was going to say, the Smeagol reference makes me happy. I have a soft spot for Smeagol.
Yeah.
Now I might go home and rewatch an extended edition of maybe Two Towers. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
We also heard from Piotr. So this is his first voicemail to us. And I don't know if there'll be fan fiction in it. Let's see.
Hello there, still slaying. This is my very first voice recording. I thought it would make more sense to record myself since I do sound like a European vampire. A few words about the Earshot episode. I had a few problems with this one, and I will get those out of the way first. First one. Why did Jonathan need a state-of-the-art sniper rifle to shoot himself? Wouldn't it be a little awkward? I'm not a suicide expert, but there are much easier ways he could have gone with. And why did he have to climb all the way up to the clock tower?
Attention.
Right, so my second problem is Buffy and her little violent treatment of the lunch lady. So she's just a mentally unstable lunch lady of a regular strength. And the Slayer's strength roundhouse kick was kind of an overkill, if you ask me. The lunch lady is not quite a match for a Slayer. She could just have gone with just gently restraining her and calling for help. Anyway, that's what I thought. Now the good stuff. The aspect of the demon. Be careful what you wish for. Pretty neat superpower, but it turns out pretty overwhelming, as we've seen. the funniest thing was when Cordelia, the way the Cordelia's lack of inner monologue was portrayed. So Cordelia thinking, whatever, what does it have to do with me? And then Cordelia out loud with the same words, whatever, what does it have to do with me? Just perfect. And if I'm not mistaken, this episode was either not aired right away because of Columbine shooting, or it was almost not aired because the theme was too close to home. But I don't know, I feel kind of strange about it because the theme was not really mass shooting. The only connection with mass shooting is the choice of weapon that Jonathan went with, which is a strange choice, rifle for suicide. And I don't know, throughout the entire show, Buffy does make a lot of points about how useless firearms are, but this episode didn't quite examine the whole complexity of gun violence. It was more, I think it was more about teenage angst, loneliness and anxiety and suicide. So I think it would have been a great episode addressing the problem of teenager mental health issues and suicide without having to resort to portraying the sniper rifle. I know it was nice for the plot because we were supposed to be thinking that Jonathan is really trying to kill someone, but I'm not sure. It sort of didn't serve the episode. And there's another one moment that I really liked was when Buffy was trying to read Angel's mind really hard, and he knew exactly what she was trying to do. And he explained that it's like the mirror thing. There's no reflection, you can't really see. So anyway, I hope this recording works out, and thank you for another episode. I have just caught up with all of the episodes on my podcast app. So Thank you very much, and watch your back. See you soon.
Thanks, Piotr. Oh, watch your back. He's a neighbor. That's a little scary. I trust him completely. I agree that the sniper rifle is kind of a weird red herring that makes us think it's going to be an episode about, school shootings or gun violence, and
and the fact that he's up in a tower.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I talked about this a little bit on the podcast where we covered Shogun. There's a history of suicide as protest, and in cases where people are committing suicide as a form of protest, they choose the most visible and dramatic option. And maybe Jonathan maybe didn't actually want to commit suicide. Maybe he really just wanted attention. And he picked the clock tower, he picked the sniper rifle for the drama and not for
the effectiveness.
The function. If you're interested in this suicide as protest stuff, go listen to the Shogun coverage on Cast of the Rings. We had a great time covering it, and if you haven't watched Shogun yet, I don't even have words. It's so good.
I need to watch it.
We have one last voicemail. Speaking of the Shogun podcast, Sam was on that with me, and here she is on Earshot.
Hi, Penny and Kara. It's Sam. Now, I have a complicated relationship with the episode Earshot. It is one of the quintessential Buffy episodes that lives rent-free in my head, and I can remember that scene in the bell tower really, really well, despite the fact that even on my rewatch, I don't tend to do this episode. Like, I think the last time I watched this was over 15 years ago, and I wanted to watch it again because it is such a core Buffy moment for me. It's so well done. I mean, so well done. Like most of the episodes in season 3, it balances some really funny moments with some genuinely dramatic and heartbreaking moments with a nice little sprinkle of horror on top. I mean, Buffy's demonic eczema was truly horrifying for me. I had forgotten about that, and I was like, ew, the demons can give us their germies? Oh, no. I'm guessing amoxicillin won't work, and yep, Angel has to go and get the heart of a demon to then feed it to her. That sounds like a lot of work. And I don't have a vampire boyfriend to do that currently. It was just so well done, though. They talked about all these themes that were just so relevant, like privacy and consent. And I get that Buffy couldn't control it. And at the same time, she did do it on purpose to Angel, which was rude. And I like that he called her out on it, and she felt bad because, yes, ma'am, that's not nice. And she was alienated by it and isolated because, yeah, that's kind of how that works. And the scene in the bell tower, she talks to Jonathan about the universality of human pain and suffering. He's not alone. And also the imaginary audience. We're not all thinking about everyone all the time. I know, all of us can get self-conscious, and it's really, people don't care. They barely noticed you. They're stuck in their own lives. This episode, I don't really do a lot of rewatching because it's so tied into a core memory for me. I remember it being delayed during the original airing because of the Columbine shootings. And that is a very tough time for me. I was a year or two younger than those kids that were killed. And I remember sitting on the couch watching the news reports, thanks, Mom and Dad. But I was watching the news reports and just crying, having the sudden realization that my school is not really a completely safe place. And that illusion for me was shattered. As was that it wasn't a stranger that could come into the school to hurt me, stranger danger of the 90s. No, it's my fellow classmates that are also kids that I have known for years could come in and just kill me one day. And so it was just this really harsh awakening for me into adulthood. And because of that, I really can't tolerate school shootings in TV shows or movies. I can tolerate a lot, but not those things. This wasn't that bad for me because I was sort of thinking about it for the show. But I'm so excited to hear the episode. You two are going to do such an awesome job, and I can't wait to hear.
I hope we live up to the expectations of our listeners. Thank you, Sam. We didn't really talk about the privacy violations or the consent aspect, and I'm glad she brought it up because that is really interesting.
Yeah.
That's a problem with telepathy. Another show I podcast about, Extraordinary, is about a world where everybody has superpowers, and the superpowers range from, flight, invisibility, the sort of classics, to being able to change your hair color at will and other sort of useless things. But there are signs up in the backgrounds of scenes where people are like, mind reading is an invasion of privacy, and it's all in the background of the show, and I keep hoping it will lead to something on the show. And so far, it's just been signage, but it is interesting.
Well, because it's such a violation.
Yeah,
your mind is supposed to be, kind of this impenetrable fortress, essentially, that nobody else can access, and the thought of somebody else being able to hear what you're thinking is kind of terrifying.
Yeah. For everyone, right? I don't want to hear what you're thinking.
Yeah.
You don't want me to hear what you're thinking. Ugh.
Well, it's there's a reason we can't do that.
Awful.
Just not good.
All right, that is the end of the main section of the podcast. Stay tuned for the Watcher's Diaries at the end if you want to hear the spoilery discussion. And if you want to join the conversation, it's so easy. You can find all our contact information at podcastica.com. It's also in the show notes for every episode. You can also find at podcastica.com links to all of our social media pages and all the other Podcastica shows. I already talked about Shogun that we put out recently. I had such a good time covering that with Sam and Jonathan. And my only regret is that we didn't cover episode to episode. We just did one podcast about the whole 10-episode series. Shogun is rich material. And I mentioned the Extraordinary cast, which I also do. That's with Greg. Extraordinary is a very silly show if you're looking for something light I recommend that. That's on Hulu or Disney Plus.
I love it. I have gone down a re-listening rabbit hole lately because House of the Dragon is about to come back for its second season. So instead of rewatching, I have been re-listening to Podcastica's coverage of it, and it's just brilliant.
It's great coverage.
I forget how insightful they are. Like they notice so many things that completely, go over my head or don't register for me. So it's been perfect kind of preparing for the second season. I forgot a lot.
Yeah.
Turns out.
I'm sure I have as well.
But I'm excited about that one. That's going to be
fun. And it's soon. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I should start rewatching too. But if you like what we do, as always, please give us that 5-star rating, a review, or like and follow and subscribe on our social media platforms and our podcast platforms. And be sure to tune in next time. We will be covering Season 3, Episode 19, Choices. That's a good one. Thanks, everyone, and you have no shame.
Oh, please. Like, shame is something to be proud of.
Such a Cordelia line.
I love that line. That's another one that I've
perfect.
stolen a bunch of times and said that to people. All right, that is the end of the non-spoiler section. If you want to avoid spoilers, you should stop listening. 3, 2, 1, now! On to the Watcher's Diaries and the spoilery stuff and things.
Yes. It's too bad we can't sneak a look at the Watcher Diaries. I'm sure it's full of fun facts to know and tell.
Yeah, that's too bad. That stuff is private.
Also, Giles keeps them in his office, in his personal files.
Most importantly, it would be wrong.
So I sort of alluded to this, but Angel saying that he'll never leave Buffy, he'll always be there. He's gonna break up with her in 2 episodes. I mean, it is so true that for the rest of the time in the Buffyverse, Angel has shown up for Buffy from time to time. Yeah. And he still loves her. And I think that if Buffy ever said, like, I'm finished cookie dough baking, I'm ready to be with you, he would come running. Yeah. But he does in fact leave her.
Yeah.
Which is a real bummer.
That's a rough one.
Also, in season 6, another demon infects Buffy, and then they need to kill it and feed part of it to her as the antidote. And in that episode, it's Spike.
So gross. Yep.
Spike is the one who gets the demon. Yeah.
I like that.
It's a great episode.
That's just, it's so good. I still have to remind myself not to jump ahead.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's like, just resist.
I really wanted to jump ahead these last couple of weeks. I've had a couple of things going on in my life that made me really want some of the comfort that I get from certain Buffy episodes, but I did not do it.
That's strong. That's very strong, because there have been plenty of times where I was in a bad mood and like, I really want to watch Tabula Rasa right now.
I love Tabula Rasa. It's so funny. Send out Spike.
It's so good. Oh God, horny. When he's like, Randy Giles. Anyway, one thing I love, like a couple of winks in this episode that are related to Jonathan. And Willow is interrogating him, and she's like, "Fantasies are fun, aren't they, Jonathan?" Oh
yeah, that's season 4 episode, like, Superstar.
Yes, I loved that episode, and of course he gets to be all rich and famous and powerful in that episode, which checks out after what we see in this one. But I love that that's kind of a little bit of a foreshadowing of that. And then of course it goes to set up one of my favorite moments in this season, if not the entire series, when Buffy gets the class protector award at the prom, and Jonathan is the one that presents it to her. I tear up almost every time I watch that. And seeing this episode and realizing if it had been aired the way it should, how much more powerful that moment would have been with Jonathan being the one to present the award
without
to her.
Earshot, you're like, why is Jonathan the one presenting the award? But it's because Buffy saved his life.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, that's Prom. Prom is
Yep.
Prom is a great episode for sweetness. Not as much of a like great plot monster of the week wise, but that's okay.
Yeah. I'd probably skip it if we weren't talking about it, like in a rewatch. That might be one of the very few that I'll skip over. Just because I don't want to see Buffy all sad and Angel and
But I love Buffy's dress. It's so beautiful.
It was such a nice 90s, but a good 90s dress.
There's some good Xander Cordelia closure that happens, which is nice. And Prom has its moments. It's not people. A lot of people will say it's one of their favorite episodes, and I'm like, really? It's fun, but it's not all that.
I guess maybe if people are more into the emotional aspects of
I think the Class Protector Award thing gets to a lot of people, and they forget that the rest of the episode is kind of ho-hum. The
Hellhounds.
The episode I am really excited to talk about is Choices, which is next time. Choices is
I can't wait.
Flawless.
So good.
It is. It has everything in it. And it's got the famous knife that Faith gets from the mayor. It's got the box of Gavrock or whatever it's called. And it's got that amazing showdown scene with the mayor and Giles and Angel. And I love Choices. It's so good.
It just kind of appropriately amps things up.
Yeah.
For the finale. Yeah. In an expertly done way.
Yeah, it's a I can't think of anything in that episode that I don't love. It's got great Faith stuff, it's got great Wesley stuff, it's got great Oz moments. It's like it's working on every level.
That'll be a fun one.
We are going to be delayed getting to Choices, as previously mentioned. I'm going to my college reunion, and then Kara is going to Scotland. So, it's all good reasons for delays. We will be back. Yeah. And as I said on our Facebook page, there's 7 seasons of Buffy and 5 seasons of Angel. We are not going to be able to do it every week for that many seasons. So there's going to be times when we have to take little breaks here and there. And we'll always come back. And
that reminds me, I did want to say, it's been a crazy couple of weeks for both of us, really. But I noticed a couple people on Facebook and on Instagram were checking in and asking how we were doing and sending well wishes, which was very sweet.
Thank you guys.
And thoughtful. That was very appreciated. And now that I have power and internet again, I can get back to preparing for Choices. So that'll be fun. That's going to be a good one.
It is. It's really going to be a good one. Also, we have a lot of listeners on YouTube.
It's so cool.
I forgot to check the numbers on YouTube, and sometimes it's a surprising number. And YouTube listeners, send in some feedback. We're not getting any feedback via YouTube, but we'd love to see some comments or something. Cool. That'd be really cool.
For sure.
And
I agree.
So that's the end of our show. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And until next time, I am Penny.
And I'm Kara.
Keep slaying.
are very good.
Your spelling's improved.
You know, Oz, I look at all this beauty, all these healthy young women, and I wonder why I ever wasted my time on Cordelia. I mean, look at her. She's no better looking than the rest of them.
None of them are really mine.
Oh, my God, he's looking at her. He's got his filthy adult pierced bras in the eyes all over my Cordy.
You're a very complex man, aren't you?